Are we ready? Not hearing anybody say no, I will call the meeting to order for Tuesday, March 9th, 2021. When you do roll call, please make sure you announce where you are joining us for this meeting. May I have roll call, please?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Also, I need to make sure that everyone's video is on. All members, all commissioners' videos are on. Thank you. All right, Commissioner Barna.
I'm here and I'm joining from my home in Mason, Michigan.
Council Liaison Clark.
Present, Mason, Michigan.
Commissioner Howe. Okay, absent. Commissioner Husby.
Here, Mason, Michigan.
Commissioner Perot.
Here, Mason, Michigan.
Commissioner Chair Sabaden.
Present from Mason.
Commissioner Shattuck. All right, absent. Commissioner Waxman.
Mason, Michigan, sorry.
And Commissioner Wren.
Here from Mason, Michigan.
Okay. Once again, Commissioner Husby, if you could leave your video on, please, for participating. Thank you. We have a quorum.
All right, I apologize, but I got an emergency at work that I'm just having to text every once in a while, so sorry.
All right, so you have to leave, Commissioner Husby?
No, I'm taking care of it on text, but when I switch over to text, the video goes off.
Oh,
So
I see, okay.
I'm just doing texting. Oh, I'm here.
Okay, and I am, for the record, Commissioner Howe texted me. He's unable to get on. He's not sure if he's got a bad meeting ID, so I just texted him the meeting ID. So he's trying to join us. So we'll move on. If there's anybody in the audience that is not here for anything that's already in the agenda, you may address the commission at this point. Not seeing anybody raise their hands, we'll move on to approval of the minutes from the regular planning commission meeting on January 12th, 2021. Are there any additions, corrections that need to be addressed? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Sure, I move to approve the minutes of the regular planning commission meeting of January 12th, 2021 as presented.
A second. Husby. All right, all in favor of approving the minutes, we'll have to do by roll call.
All right, Commissioner Barna.
Yes.
Clark.
Yes.
Howe is not here. Husby.
Yes.
Perot.
Yes.
Sabaden.
Yes.
Waxman.
Yes.
And Wren.
Yes.
Okay, motion approved. Item 5A on the agenda is a resolution 2021-01, the approval of the capital improvement plans for fiscal year 2021 through 2027. This is a public hearing. So I will open the public hearing at 6:34 p.m. If there's anybody in the audience who would like to address the commission on the capital improvement plan, they may do so now by waving vigorously on the screen. Not seeing anybody wave vigorously, I will close the public hearing at 6:34. At this point, I will entertain a motion to introduce the resolution.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve resolution 2021-01.
Any seconds?
Second. Maggie Ren.
Red, thank you, thank you. Okay, is there any discussion on, from the commission on this? Before we ask, Director Hughes if there's anything that she would like to, discuss. Director Hughes, is there anything you'd like to discuss about? Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. Council Member Clark.
Mr. Chair, I would at this point request that the planning commission allow me to abstain from voting on this issue. I will offer no comment or opinion during this discussion. I will answer questions if they're council related. The purpose for my request is that I am going to have an opportunity to vote on this resolution at the council level. And for the sake of the public and for total transparency, I think that I should just not say anything and not vote because I'm going to have an opportunity later. And I don't think it's right that I should try to influence any decision that's made this evening on this resolution and then have another opportunity to do it again at the council meeting. So, like I said, I can answer questions as a council representative, but I request permission from the planning commission to abstain, which would require someone to make a motion to that effect. And then the planning commission would have to vote on it. Thank you for the consideration, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So on my end, the audio broke up. Is everybody clear on what Council Member Clark is asking?
Yes.
Okay, so if so, I will entertain a motion to allow Mr. Clark to abstain from voting in this. public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I'm just curious, this motion would be a privileged motion or is there room for discussion prior to?
I believe there'd be room for
Remember,
Did anybody-
I believe there's an opportunity for discussion if you so desire.
then I will go ahead and make the motion to permit Council Liaison Clark to abstain from voting on this resolution.
A second? Anyone?
Or
Supposed to be a second.
Okay, I heard Barna first.
That's fine.
Okay, all in favor of this motion, say, sorry, by roll call.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, was it Ren or Barna that second?
I had Barna.
Thank you. Okay.
And I guess also just note council, or I'm sorry, Commissioner Howe has joined us at 6:38.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, so we will do a quick roll call vote. Barna,
yes,
Clark, oh, well, sorry, Clark's not voting.
Yeah.
Okay. Howe,
I'm just staying because I'm not sure what you're voting on. I just got here, so I don't even know what I'm voting on, so I'll stay.
the motion was to allow Council Liaison Clark to abstain from any discussion or voting on the CIP.
Because of his position on city council.
Correct.
Aye.
Husby,
Yes.
Perot,
Yes.
Sabaden,
Yes.
Shattuck, Waxman,
Yes.
and Ren.
Yes.
Okay.
Motion passes.
Thank you, everybody. So I guess I'll bring this up at this point. I guess I want to make it, everybody understand or make clear for me is we are not approving the CIP. We are how do I say this? We are approving the CIP for and asking the city council adopt the CIP as written. We aren't actually approving it. That's a function of city council. I just want to make that clear. If I'm correct, Director Hughes.
I am looking at this. There was a SAR. Correct, you're voting to recommend. I'm just checking here. You should have a SAR and a resolution in your packets.
And we do, but in the agenda, it says approval of the capital city plan. All I'm doing is just clarifying. I just want to make sure that everybody's understanding.
Thank you. Yes, you're approving the resolution to recommend that city council adopt.
Correct. Okay. Okay. Is there any other discussion on the CIP program for 2021 through 2027?
This is our time, right, to, if we wanted to make a recommendation of a change or add or something, that's what we're doing.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Is there anything that you have? Any questions for Director
No.
Hughes or City Manager Stewart?
I do not. I just wanted to clarify what your comment was. I just want to make sure I understood it.
Okay.
Were
Director
there
Hughes, are
any
you-
major,
Oh, go ahead.
were there any major changes from the last version that we saw?
Mr. Chair, can I speak to that?
Please. Yes, please.
So there was only one major project change, and it was in reaction to some of the discussion at the CIP workshop, which was a better understanding of the Columbia Street Bridge crossing and the additional money that would be required to actually move forward with the protected pathway. And so we did add that as a project. We do have an estimate on the work in there. And so it's not identified for next fiscal year. It's the following fiscal year. But we did want to put at least a placeholder of the amount that we anticipate it being if MDOT were to approve it. Because there was some confusion at the workshop of, is the work that's being done next fiscal year actually going to complete the project? It's not. It's just the design work.
Any questions for City Manager Stewart? Director Hughes, were you motioning that you wanted to make a comment?
I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware that City Manager Stewart was here. So.
Okay. Yep. Okay. If there's no other comments, I will call for a roll call vote then.
Okay, Barnum,
Yes.
Clark, oh, I'm sorry, Howe,
Yes.
Husby,
Yes.
Perot,
Yes.
Sabaden,
Yes.
Shattuck is absent, Waxman,
Yes.
and Wren. Wren?
Yeah, sorry.
All right, motion passed.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Item 5B on the agenda is a resolution 2021-02. Amber Nixon is requesting a special use permit to increase the capacity of a family daycare from its current licensed maximum of 6 children to allow for a maximum of 12 at 914 South Eugenia Drive in the city. For the record, Amber Nixon is with us, and I appreciate you being here. Again, this is a public hearing, which I will open at 6:44. Mrs. Nixon, this is your opportunity to make a comment, tell the commission what you'd like to do, if there's anything in addition.
Hi,
Hello.
thank you for letting me speak. And I just wanted to up my license. I'm getting a lot of requests, especially with the pandemic. It's really hard to find good quality care. And I just want to be able to expand that to more families that need it at this time, especially at this time. That's the gist of what I would like to do and be able to do. This is Carter.
Hi, Carter.
Sorry, he's real into the whole tongue thing. I don't really.
Okay. Well, if we can ask you to stay on, in case there's any commissioners that have any questions for you, we'd appreciate that. Is there anybody else that would like to, from the audience that would like to discuss this in the public hearing? With nobody else coming forward, I'll close the public hearing at 6:45. And I will call for a motion to introduce the resolution 2021 for the special use permit.
Are we gonna have,
Chair,
I'm sorry, who was that? I missed it.
that was Husby, are we gonna have discussion after the motion?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I
Yes.
move for approval of, Planning Commission Resolution 2021, is this -02?
That's correct.
Support
Special use.
Was that Barna? I'm sorry, I was looking down. Okay,
was me.
okay. Now, at this point, I'd like to ask, I guess at this point, before we move forward, I want to make everybody aware, in case you haven't seen your email, Director Hugh just sent an email prior to the meeting about, from Mrs. Nixon on the topic of it is the trash receptacle of where they'll be, how they'll be placed. Essentially, in a very short term, they will be inside of a garage. Oh, thank you very much. There it is. I thought somebody was taking over the meeting. So, that's the email that was sent at 5:52 p.m. today from Director Hugh. At this point, I will open it up to the commissioners on any questions, comments, discussion that we'd like to have about this resolution.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Howell.
How long has she been in business doing this at this location?
Mrs. Nixon?
I'm sorry, I forgot I was muted. I have been running the licensed daycare as just a family for my daughter's 7, my oldest is 7, so 6 years, between 5 and 6 years.
Okay. Thank you. My next question, Mr. Chairman, is this, I did go over there and drive by it, and it's a friendly residential neighborhood, and I don't think it's going to affect any of that or the master plan. But do we have any feedback from the police? Has there been any traffic complaints or noise complaints in the neighborhood?
Mr. Chair, would you like me to comment?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So I did, we always circulate this to all departments, and I did hear back from fire and police, and those comments are in your staff report. Essentially, they had no comments or concerns.
Thank you. I missed that. Thank you. My apologies.
No problem. Mr. Chair, I guess I also would say that I was in the area. I did do a site visit at about 5 in the day, so I was able to see some of the traffic with pickup and drop off. And this is something that I spoke with the applicant about. And I think if you'll notice in her application and her narrative, she does have a strategy, and she is very conscious of making sure that traffic is managed in the driveway. Of course, if we were to receive complaints, then we would obviously work with her on that to address anything.
Mr.
Commissioner Husby.
I got it. Maybe I missed it here, but I wanted to look. Is Mrs. Nixon there? Is her daycare state licensed at this point, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Has the state, with your applications and everything, they have gone ahead and gave you, well, they can't license it until we do our thing, but have you got documentation from them that if we were to approve this, that they would move ahead with your licensing.
Yes, she is set to come out April 12th so that she could move me from 6 to 12. She just can't do that until I get an approval from you.
Okay, so,
But yeah, we've been
All
in, it's just basically, she's like, as soon as you get all the paperwork, I'm gonna set it for the 12th. I'm like, I should have it by then.
okay,
All right, then we'll get you set and ready to go. They just can't come out until it's paperwork and more paperwork.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Also, I spoke with the applicant that this would trigger a change of occupancy. So she would need to have her certificate of occupancy for the home updated. The building code does have some requirements for when you jump from 6 and you go up to 12, the building code changes just a little bit. So there may be some improvements necessary to meet the building code. Usually it revolves around egress, smoke detectors, fire extinguishers, that kind of a thing. So she is aware that that has to be completed before she can accept more than 6 children.
So it changes it even on an existing structure.
Yes, it changes at 6 because it's considered a residential accessory to the residence at 6. But when it goes beyond that, just like she's here tonight for a special use permit, it changes at 7. The minute you go from 6 to 12, suddenly it changes, and it's there's a few different code requirements. It's no longer an accessory to a residential unit.
Which portion of the building code are you citing on that?
I don't have it right in front of me, but I did read it, and I spoke to the building official about that. And like I said, it usually amounts to, they'll check, hand railings, fire extinguishers, smoke alarms, that type of thing. So we would investigate.
All that's still required under the current use.
It changes when it's currently classified as a residential accessory for a residential structure. But when you increase, it just like with zoning, there is a change in the code.
Not in our code.
It's the state building code, and that's what we've adopted and observed.
That's what I was wondering, which portion of the state building code are you referring to? I know that we haven't adopted a fire code, but the fire code, which is some of the things that you're referring to, would not consider this a change of occupancy.
Right. We'll be consulting with the building official on that. Yes. So the building official will be the one to make that determination if there's any improvements that need to be made at all. There might not be. So.
Well, that's certainly something that's important to know before we give any kind of an approval.
Well, but it's not part of the purview of the zoning permit. Right now, your determination has to do with the zoning permit. She can't go.
Actually, this is not a zoning permit, it's a special use permit.
Well, it's part of the zoning chapter. It is a zoning decision, not a building code decision. The zoning portion comes first, and then once the zoning passes, one of the requirements of the decision is that she'll observe all other state, federal, county laws after that. So typically we approve zoning based on the facts as they pertain to zoning. And then
but it's not a change of zoning. The zoning is the same. Under RS3, under the use of right, a permitted use under right is a daycare for up to 7 children. After that, it becomes a special use permit question when it goes from 7 to 12.
That's correct. That's a zoning. Zoning covers the use of land and structure.
There's no change in the zoning. The zoning is still going to be in RS3.
The use is what's changing. The use is changing, which requires the special use permit.
The use is the same. A daycare is a daycare. The only difference is the count. And both of those uses are permitted under our zoning ordinance.
When it goes from 7 to 12, it requires a special use permit.
Correct.
Correct. That's the zoning function.
That's all. That's all it's required is the special use permit.
From a zoning perspective, yes, the building code is separate.
So
the building code is enforced by the building official, not the planning commission.
Then why weren't we provided with a report from the building official as to whether or not if this is going to be acceptable. So if I don't see where that has, it's all tied together, but I don't understand how I can make a decision on granting a special use permit if this is something that the building inspector can come in and say, well, no, you can't do this.
No, it's allowed under the building code. I'm just saying she might need to add an extra fire extinguisher. The code would specify that there needs to be an extra fire
That's under
extinguisher.
the fire code in the city of Mason does not adopt the fire code.
Well, Council Liaison Clark, the building code does speak to those items as well. And that's where what is before you tonight is a zoning discussion. It's a matter of a special use permit for
So once
zoning.
again, which portion of the building code are we to relook into?
It's in the International Building Code. I don't have the chapter and verse before me, but typically how it has worked in the past is that it's always a requirement that anytime a zoning permit, a zoning approval is made, that the next step is that they then go to building. The building official does not always comment, but he'll say for commercial developments, he'll provide a standard comment that special inspections are required. But that's it's not a fact that would determine if a zoning permit should or should not be issued. It's a separate function of, does the handrail need to be 2 inches higher? Do they need an extra fire extinguisher? That's a building code issue, and it's not part of the purview of the Planning Commission.
Well, and you're still mixing a change of zoning with a special use permit, and they're two entirely different animals.
A special use permit is a classification of a use, but it's a different type of use under zoning.
Let me walk through my comments and my references so you can understand where I'm coming from. The email that you sent us cited section 94-225F and 94-394D and said you were receiving notice of the application from Amber Nixon. If you read 94-255F, it reads request for review. The zoning official shall notify the agencies and individuals identified in section 94-394D or other agencies or individuals as deemed appropriate of receipt of the site plan application. First of all, this is not a site plan application, it's a request for a special use permit. Secondly, under Article 7, site plan review and landscape standards, which is where your reference is from, the intent and purpose definition, section 94-221 reads, it is the intent of this article to require site plan review and approval for certain structures and uses that can be expected to have a significant impact on natural resources, traffic patterns, and the character of future development in the immediate area and the entire community. The requirements contained in this article are intended to ensure that all development within the city is in conformance with the intent and purpose of this chapter. It then lists the uses subject to site plan review in section 94-222. Nothing in this section references anything in the RS listings unless it's a platted subdivision, which this neighborhood probably was when it was built. And because of that, it has already been through a site plan review. Now, this application may fall under section 94-222-4, uses permitted by special use permit, but when the entire section and article refers to new development, I would have to wonder if it does apply. It also states the uses of land and structures listed in this section shall receive final site plan review and approval in accordance with this article prior to the granting of a building permit or certificate of occupancy, neither of which are required for this application. The only other reference I could find, and I might have missed one, refers us back to section 94-191B4, which has to do with the timeframes of acceptance of the application, meeting dates, etc. We're also directed to section 94-394D in the email, which reads, the zoning official shall notify the following agencies within 5 days of receipt of a proper application from a petitioner or introduction of an ordinance by the city council to amend this chapter, requesting their comments and recommendations. This application is not a request or proposal to amend the zoning ordinance, so I don't think that implies. And in case you're wondering, this notification includes the city engineer, superintendent of public schools, the drain commissioner, the health department, the road commission, the airport manager, and all the utility companies. Now, I think it's important to point out that this property is currently zoned RS3 and that a daycare under 94-123C3 is a permitted accessory use of right as long as the number cared for is less than 7. The only reason we're here tonight is because of the applicant wants to increase that number to 12, which requires a special use permit under section 94-123D2. Now, when reviewing the staff review of the request, one of the first things I noticed was the description of the location. And I guess I don't understand what that means. It reads the site is located in fronts on both Ash Street, M36 state trunk line under the jurisdiction of Michigan Department of Transportation, and South Jefferson Street, a local public roadway. This address on Eugene is nowhere near either of these routes, so I don't understand what that means.
I'm sorry, Council Liaison, what are you reading? That's not, I'm not finding, where, is that in the
That's
staff
on-
report?
That's on page 72, page 72. Excuse me, the top of page 73, excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm assuming it's a copy
I
and paste.
noticed, yeah, I noticed that as well. I assume that she had cut and pasted from a previous report, that it was a clear typo, basically.
That's incorrect. Correct. That is a mistake. That is an error in the staff report that we did not catch. So that is correct.
Also, under the review of submittal, staff states the planning commission will need to determine if the facts presented create a commercial encroachment on a residential area and whether or not impacts can be reasonably mitigated. Once again, my thought is this is not a commercial operation. This is an accessory permitted right of use. The next issue mentioned is the toys, which are permitted in RS3 without a permit, and a screening of trash receptacles, which is not required in any RS district unless it is included as a condition in a new development. The next section staff reviewed for is adherence to 94-227, which are standard site plan review and approval, none of which I think apply in this case. It's noted that more information is needed where it says the site shall be developed so as not to impede the normal and orderly development, improvement, and use of surrounding property for uses permitted in this chapter. The neighborhood has already been through this scrutiny when the subdivision was developed.
Mr. Clark,
Yeah.
hold on. Let's slow down just a touch. Let's allow her to address some of these before, because otherwise we're gonna get lost and we won't be able to go back to where, so I think, do you want to start on page 73? I think if I'm understanding these correctly, anything where there's information needed is what you're questioning on page 73.
Well, the first one is 94-227, which is standard for site plan review and approval, which is all about new development. As an example, the site shall be developed so that all elements shall be harmoniously and efficiently organized in relation to the size, shape, type, and topography of the site and surrounding property. So I don't think that 227 applies here in any way, shape, or form.
Mr. Chair, if I could speak to that.
Please.
If you'll go back to page 72. So when this subdivision was first approved, it was approved for single family use. And the term by right does not mean without permit. It just means that it's a use allowed. It's compatible with the zoning for the area. When you look at page 72, the zoning ordinance is very clear. Chapter 94 is the zoning chapter. Anything to do with land, the use of land or structure that's covered by the master plan is covered by chapter 94 zoning. So it explicitly states, as I have listed in section 94-123D2, it's very specific about daycare in a residential zone, in particular that residential zone. A special use is required, special use permit is required. If you look further, it also states that anytime there is a special use, that special uses also require site plan review. And what that means is that we're making a change. There's a special use permit. We're increasing traffic, we're increasing parking. It's a little bit different than what it was originally approved for. And therefore, we need to double check. And we need to double check and say, is this going to disturb the neighbors? Is there going to be, with the backyard and the toys, does there need to be a fence? Those are things that typically get covered under a site plan review. Because this is a change, that threshold has been triggered. And that's part of the function of zoning. So that is why when it says that a site plan review is required, then you go to the site plan review standards and the special use permit standards, and that's how those factor into the decision tonight.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes, sir.
are you,
If you go to site plan review and approval, section 94-227, I see nothing in there that says that addresses special use permit.
It's actually the opposite. If you go to the special use permit, that's where it states that site plan review is required.
For new development.
It says under section 94-222-4 states that any use permitted by a special use permit requires site plan review.
So development, I think in this case means not just like building something. It also means changing what that property is being used for and using it for something else.
Correct. Zoning covers the use of land and structures.
okay,
If you look at 222-4, the uses of land and structures listed in this section shall receive final site plan review and approval in accordance with this article prior to the granting of a building permit or certificate of occupancy. Uses in the O1, O2, C1, C2, C3, M1, and M2 zoning districts. There's nothing mentioned about RS.
It also says under site plan, there's a line in there that says for any use requiring a special use permit. And that's what this is. That's what this triggers. If you'd like, we can get an opinion from the city attorney, but I feel very confident with my interpretation.
Mr. Chair,
yes.
Commissioner Husby accidentally dropped off, but he can't get back in. He said you need to let him in.
I did just let him in. so-
Okay,
Okay.
he just sent me the text.
Okay,
Can I continue?
please.
Almost done. In regard to the public comment concerning toys, I would think that in any residential area, this might be a concern and one that should be resolved by each neighbor and not the local government. But what I did see was a 6-foot chain link fence, at least on one side. I didn't go onto the property because that would be trespassing. The next note by staff is that during the site visit, they saw trash receptacles visible in the driveway in front of the garage. Once again, in a residential area, this is where I would probably expect to see trash receptacles, as there is no requirement for screening those receptacles in the RS designation. If we start here requiring it, then every dwelling in every RS designation should be required to do the same. Under the state licensing guidelines for daycares, which is R400.8360 garbage and refuse, Rule 360, they required all garbage must be removed from the center daily. Garbage containers must be washed when soiled. Garbage stored outside must be in sealed plastic bags and watertight containers with tight fitting covers or in a covered dumpster. And number 4, outside garbage and refuse must be picked up or removed at a minimum of once a week. Then we go into the next statement that is worthy of note is the requirement to obtain a building permit to update the certificate of occupancy, demonstrating that the structure meets the building code for the proposed use. The property will continue to be responsible for observing the city's ordinances, in particular Chapter 6 property maintenance, as well as the terms of Chapter 94 zoning and the special use permit. I'd like to know where, and you tell me we get that authority under the building code, but I don't know where. And there's no requirement to pull a building permit unless the applicant is remodeling the house to accommodate the increase of the children, which it doesn't under state licensing requirements. There's nothing that I can see that would predicate her from doing that, because the requirements are pretty much identical from 6 or 7 to 12. There's very little changes there. once again, I don't agree with the change of the certificate of occupancy because this is not a change of occupancy. And I only see that requirement listed under new development. Under new development, staff then cites section 94-191F, which reads basis of determination. Before approving a special use permit, the planning commission shall find by clear and convincing proof that the applicable standards set forth by this chapter shall be satisfied by the completion and operation of the proposed development. The planning commission shall review the particular circumstances and facts of each proposed use in terms of these standards and shall make written findings showing that such shall be designed, constructed, operated, and maintained so as to be harmonious and appropriate in appearance with the existing or intended character of the general vicinity, and that such use will not change the essential character of adjacent property or the zoning district in which it is proposed. Once again, this is not a new construction or development. It's an existing structure that has been there for a good number of years and will be exercising a permitted accessory use of right with the addition of 6 children. Now, I'm sure you probably all wonder why I took your time this evening when I agree with the staff recommendation of approval. I think there are some points in this decision that need to be addressed, such as the requirement to screen trash receptacles that is not required anywhere in our ordinances for RS development unless it was a requirement established at the time the development was proposed and it was a condition of the approval. If we are suggesting that it become a requirement here, then it has to become a requirement everywhere else in the city. The same holds true for the requirement for a building permit, unless the applicant is planning on remodeling, and I saw no evidence of that provided to us with this submittal. That holds true with the occupancy permit. This is not a change of use, it's a permitted use, and unless the structure is going to be going through renovations, it concerns me that we're making this a requirement. Well, all that said, it appears to me that the zoning and development director should be proposing additional language in our ordinances that separates a simple special use permit request such as this from the more involved and cumbersome process required for a new development. As I said, I agree with the recommendation of approval, but only if the previously mentioned and suggested requirements are removed. Thank you for your time.
Okay, that was a ton to digest.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I just wanted to make a comment that I don't believe that because we're talking about a special use permit in this particular situation for this property, for this use, the requirements of screening trash receptacles, which would increase with more kids, right? There's 5 containers, there might be 7 containers. I don't know how much trash is needed. That only applies to this property. So because they have a special use permit, because they're operating this business, it's absolutely true that a business with a childcare business serving 12 children is business, which is a commercial enterprise. So that's fine that, as far as I'm concerned, that they do that within residential areas. But it is, I guess what I would say is if we think that operating a childcare home up to 12 children should be a permitted use by right, then we can change the ordinance, but that's not how it's written now.
Right. Okay.
Correct. I would just point out that it is no longer accessory. It's become something different because it's gone beyond what's allowable as an accessory. So when it moves up to 12, it now requires a special use permit because it is an expansion of that use.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Commissioner
Mr. Rex.
Brennan,
Hold on, Mr. Clark. Hold on.
That's fine.
Just to be clear, it's not that it moves up to 12, it's that the roster increases above 7, which triggers the special use.
Correct.
So the state licensing has specific requirements. The city, because of the state licensing, would have to grant a special use under the existing zoning, which is what this is doing, which would follow the city's procedures for special use. So, I mean, anytime we're not talking about this is every house in the neighborhood is a daycare. We're talking about one house in the neighborhood is
This
a daycare, and therefore it requires special use, a special use permit because of the licensing that is being requested from the state. So, you know, I mean, I understand Councilmember Clark's concerns, but we're not saying that everybody in the entire city has to have screened in trash. We're saying this one property does because they are requesting a license that requires a special use permit under the law. So therefore, these standards do apply to this property because it is special in its request.
Chair, that's not entirely true. The license does not require by the state that she gets from the state does not require a special use permit. That the special use permit is our requirement, not a state requirement for her licensing. So, and for Commissioner Barna, just so you understand it, that a licensed residential care can be in a RS3. It's a permitted use of right without a special use permit, without screening or anything else. So, and I would say that I would argue that
Right, but only up to 6 kids.
No, not daycare. No, not daycare. It's a state licensed residential facility.
It's the same for both. If you read the language, you're allowed up to 6, whether it's a licensed, it's the number. The number is the trigger.
It doesn't say that in our ordinance. It says use is permitted by right a state licensed residential facility except adult foster care facilities for care and treatment of persons released from assigned to or adult correctional facilities.
In that instance, there's a separate ordinance for that. That's why it says refer to, because I didn't put the whole section in there, but there's additional provisions for consideration. Right now, we're only talking about the daycare. And that's what I'm focused on for up to 12 individuals.
Okay. Any other comments, Councilmember Clark?
I'm looking, hang on.
He's looking, okay. Is there any other questions for the applicant or for Director Hugh?
I just want to comment that as a parent who needs childcare, I would say I'm really excited about this development. I think offering more childcare in Mason is going to be a good thing for the community.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some filler comments for you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I followed up on that and because it goes to 192.8, which is about institutional structures and uses. And there's nothing in there that limits, that says 612 or anything else that I can find. Now, it might be someplace else, but that's the reference in the current zoning ordinance. And that's where I went and I didn't see that any reference there. So, like I said, to summarize what I was saying is that I think that this whole approval process for Ms. Nixon should have taken 5 minutes. And I think that what the zoning director should do is recommend language to the city council through the planning commission to change this process from, so we don't get confused about a special use permit as opposed to a building permit or a zoning change, because this is really a simple issue that could have been addressed had the procedure been set up a lot easier.
Yeah. With all of that, Director Hughes, is there anything that you'd like to say to that?
I guess I'm happy to consider it. I guess I don't understand. We've used this process multiple times. This is a change of use in the neighborhood. It's an increase. There is a different impact to neighbors. And typically zoning is, it's about equal treatment of all properties. And so when you start coming up with different, a different set of standards for this property, a different, we have to be careful that all properties need to be evaluated and treated fairly and equally. So a special use permit, these are standards that apply to all special use permits throughout the city. The site plan standards apply to all site plan reviews throughout the city. It's the zoning, it's where we say, okay, maybe you need an extra setback, it's the nuances of the particular district that sometimes come into play that may change, so.
Well, as I said, this is not a change of zoning. It's still gonna be, if we grant this approval, she's gonna have 12 kids in there, and it's still gonna be an RS3. The zoning does not
But she
change.
will have correct, but she will have a special use permit, which allows the increase for the
But
business.
it doesn't change the zoning, and you keep saying that it changes zoning, and it does not.
No, I never said it changes zoning. I'm saying that zoning applies to the use of land and structures. Chapter 94 is the zoning chapter, and it addresses the use of land and structures. So right now, she is asking for a change of the type of use. It's no longer classified as an accessory. It is now requiring a special use permit because it's over and above the threshold of what's allowed as an accessory.
So is the daycare not a daycare?
It's a daycare, but it's now at a higher number. So there's more traffic, there's more children.
So a daycare is a daycare.
Well,
It doesn't-
I'm following
that
the
doesn't
laws that
change.
were passed and I'm following the laws that were passed by the community. And the community, per the law, has decided that this is the process that they would like this type of operation to go through. If someone would like to petition for something different, then, that's, I don't make up those, I don't make that up. I simply, I'm obligated to follow the law and uphold the law.
So with all of that being said, Councilmember Clark, is there anything in the resolution? I know you said that you agree with it, but is there anything in the resolution itself that you feel needs to be changed?
I got so much paper here, I didn't even got to the resolution.
Mr. Chair.
Well, there's
Yes.
certainly some references.
Hold on. Oh, Mr. Waxman, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the resolution. I think the only things that would be changed in the resolution would be conditions based on those areas in the staff report where information was needed. I don't think there's any changes necessary to it. It's fairly boilerplate language. So if there's no, based on, unless we're making changes, because I don't see anywhere in this, we would have to amend the resolution to
Right.
require the garbage to be, shielded.
Well,
and-
I mean, the trash receptacles, she addressed that in the email and I'm satisfied with it. Not that there was anything that we could do to it anyways. I mean, she seems to be going above and beyond by making sure that they're in the garage at night. So I can appreciate that. And, so be it. Yeah, so Mr. Clark, is there anything in there that you see that needs to be updated or revised?
The only thing that I would say is the references to 94-227 would be struck because it's not a site plan review, it's a special use permit review under 191F. But I'm not gonna win that argument and I'm not gonna hold this lady up. So that fight will be taken in another day.
Okay. Is there any other comments? All right, with that being said, I will take a roll call vote on resolution 2021-02.
Okay, Commissioner Barna,
Yes.
Clark. I'm sorry, Council Liaison Clark, you're on mute.
Yes.
Howe,
Yes.
Husby,
Yes.
Pearl,
Yes.
Sabatin,
Yes.
Waxman,
Yes.
Ren.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes.
Okay. Ms. Nixon, you may go to your next step in the approval process. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
Have
everybody.
a good night. You too. Okay, if we, let's see, item 6A in unfinished business is in your packet. You had the approved minutes from the joint city council and planning commission meeting from February 11th. Was there any comment on that that we needed to discuss? Director Hughes, was there anything that we needed that you wanted to discuss on that other than it was included in our packet?
Thank you. No, I, if you did have any comments or concerns, we had talked about making sure that they were approved by both the planning commission and city council. But I think it got approved, and so we just thought we would ask you, and if you had any concerns, then we would, submit it.
Okay. Okay, not hearing anything. Item 6B, this is a reminder of this Monday, a week from yesterday. This coming Monday, March 15th at 8 p.m. Is the master plan request for proposals packets that will be distributed. We will get those many packets prior to the meeting. And again, that's next Monday at 8 p.m. Now, something I did want to make comment on, on the agenda, it says at 8 p.m. In the city manager's report, it says 8 p.m. or immediately following. I guess that's just if the council goes along, we will meet. So I guess everybody should just join the council meeting and watch it.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Once we post it at 8 o'clock, we can't have the meeting earlier than 8, but it would
Okay.
be 8 or soon after.
Okay. And that is a virtual meeting.
Correct.
That is not in person. So without looking at my email, I think we will get a meeting ID for that coming up. Or do we have that?
We're preparing the packet right now. And so
Perfect. Okay. All right. So watch in your emails for a meeting ID coming up.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I am working a vaccine clinic that day, so I may not be able to attend because it doesn't get done until the evening. Sorry.
Okay. Vaccines are important. So thank you for volunteering. I appreciate that. Item 7 under new business in your packet, there is a Michigan Association of Planning training opportunities. Director Hugh, do you want to talk about this, please?
Yes, we've offered these in the past, and I know some of you have attended this evening, but especially given our conversation, I think it's wonderful when people challenge and ask questions. I would encourage all of you to attend the training because that's where a lot of the times some of this information is covered in those trainings. And if you have not taken site plan review or planning and zoning essentials and you intend to be on the planning commission for a while, I would strongly encourage you to take those just to, again, support and empower you in your role so that you're aware of the state laws, you're aware of legal cases and precedents, and that helps make us make more legally defensible decisions.
And if you would like to attend these, there was an email that Director Hughes sent out about a week ago of how to go about signing up for these and how to get compensated for it. All right.
Sure.
Yes.
Just a couple questions for the director on this. Some of these, they they rotate these schedules, but these occur quarterly, I think, right? A lot of them.
Sometimes they'll do fall and spring. So
Okay.
yeah, they might do some more in the fall. I know that in the past we hosted one. We had hosted one in I think it was July a year or so ago.
And if we've registered on the website, then our membership is confirmed. We don't necessarily need to come through you for that, right?
Correct. If you're able to register on the website, that's just fine. We did just submit a revised roster so that everyone, all planning commissioners and ZBA members will be registered as members with the Michigan chapter. And that means you'll be getting your monthly magazine and then you can log in and have a login and account so that you can register and you get the member rate for any workshops.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 8A, council member report. Council member Clark. What's going on at the city council?
Well, Mr. Chair, we've been working on and passed the rules of order for the city council, city boards and commissions. There was some discussion on that, and but we did pass that, and it affects all of us. So if you hadn't seen that, look it up. We have we dealt with ordinance 233, which was to amend chapter 2, the administration article 3, officers, employees, division 3 code of ethics. Once again, there was some discussion on that, but it did actually pass. And then let's see, lastly, we talked at the last meeting about the park capital improvement updates, updates on the Rainer Park master plan and the playground for the next steps. We authorized staff to seek bids for demolition and reconstruction of the Leyland Park Pavilion. Then there was a discussion on snow removal, and there was a discussion on communication with the city manager and the communication with the city manager and our expectations for that. And that's about it.
Okay. All right, and I guess I guess one thing I'll comment, I know the state has changed some of the rules as far as meeting in person versus virtual, and for the time being, this is will likely change, but for the short term anyways, we will continue meeting virtually.
Mr. Chair, that was one thing that the city council, a motion the city council did make and approved, was that as soon as those restrictions were lifted, that the city council would meet face to face. So by doing that, we kind of expedited it. So once the restrictions were lifted, we didn't have to go to a meeting virtual and then wait 2 more weeks before we could actually meet in person. So we passed that motion that as soon as it was acceptable that we would be able to meet in person. So I anticipate, I guess not on the 15th because of the joint meeting, but I expect that at the first meeting in April, we'll be meeting in person.
Okay. And I would assume then that all the other boards and commissions would follow suit. So it's likely that our next planning commission meeting in April will be in person. So watch your emails for that, more to come. Does anybody have any questions for Councilmember Clark? Okay, in your packet was city manager report from city manager Stewart. Lots of things going on in and around the city. I believe that is all that I have. Is there anything else from any of the commissioners that would like to talk real quick? If there's nothing else, I would adjourn this meeting at 7:34. Thank you, everybody, for coming. See you Monday night at 8 o'clock on the 15th. Have a good week. We're adjourned.
Hmm.